Okay, thank you very much, Nariman, and good afternoon to everyone. And I'm very happy, to be here to share with you, some information about uh, housing development in the country. So the content of my presentation is first is about urbanization and housing sector development during the last 30 years in Vietnam. Second, I will talk about housing challenges, and later about policy recommendation and conclusion. So now, as far as you know, Vietnam is a Southeast Asian country. The population is about 97 million inhabitants. That is population in 2019. And we have the land area about 330,000 square meters. But the level of urbanization in Vietnam is low to compare with Southeast Asian and global level. Urbanization level is about 35%. And there are also issues similar to the housing urban development in developing country. That means there are also issues related to slum, the provision of housing services, environmental decay, and of course, there are challenging in the how to create jobs, how urbanization can contribute to economic development. Urban sector in Vietnam, even though it's low, but contribute about 70% of national output. And of course, there are issues I mentioned is about poverty, urban poverty, inequity between urban and rural area, and issue related to the traffic jam, pollution, safety, and of course, the issue of climate change that all you know about. Here, the picture you can see, is about the level of urbanization. It is expected by 2030 that the total population in Vietnam will reach about 103 million inhabitants, and urban is about 40%, more than 40%, 42, 44%. But still, you can see in the picture, the urban population and urbanization in process in Vietnam is low to compare with the global standard. For example, Asian urbanization level is now is more than 40%. And globally, we are more than 50%, 55% of the urbanization level. Vietnam, Vietnam is a developing country. It's a country before it followed the socialism, the former socialism model. That means that command planning, government, and state take the ownership and very top-down level in economic management. They are not allowed the free market. So government produce, distribute, own the productivity, own the product and services. So now Vietnam taking the renovation, đổi mới, that means in Vietnamese, is to introduce the free market. And in the housing sector, before they consider housing as like social goods, that government is responsible. But now it's changing housing as commodity and at the same time social good. So that is combination of both. Social good, that means that is social services that government have to provide, have to subsidize. But as a commodity, that free market, that people can trading, can sell like commodity in the market. And there are many new law, new regulation to ensure, for example, the land use right. For example, land before it under state management. Currently, the land is still is not allowed to be privately land, not freehold. It's a leasehold system. But government now allow to trading the land, to exchange the land use. That means people can sell the land use right. It's not selling the land, selling the right to use the land. and people can transfer. And government also take some certain level to decentralize the power to different level of government and to the people also. And of course, there are laws to introduce the housing market to allow people to join the production and distribution of the housing commodity. And there are many changes in the housing production and of such services. In this picture, you will see the đổi mới policy, the renovation policy, the reform policy is starting by 1986. But the reform consistently since 1990, when the Constitution allowed the free market to be open in the law regarding particularly we introduce the new land law, which is as I say, allow people to trade, to exchange, to transfer the use, the right use of the land. And of course, in the housing sector, allow the more ownership, allow people trading and selling and contracting the house. So as before, government is a sole like producer and distributor of the housing commodity. But now in the free market, so there are people allowed to build the house. Because people build the house is a lower cost, and of course they can pay for that. So that is the sandwich housing sector. Another sector still government continue to interfere. That government build housing. Government still have some funding and they are located to build and they have company under the management. They are contracting and selling the house. The developing housing model, etc. And government before, they take care on the social housing. Today, they continue with the social housing, but very limited number. So that is only for people very poor and maybe from a preference group like government official. So government wins social housing for such people. But particularly the new actor operating in the housing sector, that is the private sector. And private sector working in commercial housing and is working also in rental housing, commercial rental housing. So this is changing the picture of the different sector, of different stakeholder, different actor that engaging in the housing production and distribution. So this change, impressive change. I mean, in the environment. Hello? Can you hear me well?
Yes, everything is okay.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so you can see that the number of housing increases about nearly 70%, 77% of the total household. That means more than 20 million households, 21 million households. Now they are living in the newly built house and apartment since 2000. That is great change because the volume of the housing that it produces. The housing area increases for 4 times. Before, it's about 6 square meters per inhabitant. And now today they are more than 20. I mean, most 24 square meters in the urban sector. And there are more different typology of housing from apartment, villas, individual, detached house, etc. Yeah, they are in the market. So people have more choice to select it. And of course, there are also a housing, social housing program for the student, for worker, and for low-income people that people now starting benefiting from housing. And housing sector is a part of the economy. So it contributed significantly to the country GDP growth. And of course, that is the country urbanization, industrialization, contributing to the housing development. And at the same time, housing development contributing to the economic development and social development of the country. When we talk about housing, it defines the house. When we talk about housing, that means is access to services, access to infrastructure. So currently, in Vietnam, still, the slum level is about 34%. When I'm talking about slum, it's about habitat standard. That means about housing, tenure, legal or illegal. If illegal, that is slum. It's about durability. It's about also about the structure of the house. It's temporary, that is slum. It's about also about the access to the sanitation, access to water, clean water, etc. So currently, before the slum level is about 60%. But currently, the slum level, according to UN Habitat Standard, is only 34 and 35%. Nearly all the house now, they have the lighting and electricity for lighting. They are also have nearly 100%, 99%, they have the hygienic water use. Of course, some they are using the pipe water, but other using also the pumping water, but it hygienic water. And they are most of them have septic tank or semi-septic tank, particularly in the country, in the urban area, it's around 89%. So that means the sanitation situation in the country improved it a lot in urban sector because of housing improvement. But there are many challenging, yes. You see here, I don't have the recent figure. Maybe I have to look inside. That it still need high informality. When I'm talking about informality, that means people doing by themselves, sometimes without construction permit, sometimes because it's a sandwich, therefore they do not accept adequate access to infrastructure, to the road, to the sanitation, and the drainage system. So yearly, the country produce about 273,000 housing units per year. But last number of this one is a semi-structure, semi-permanent structure. That means maybe lacking the roof or lacking the wall, etc. And of course, it unplanned development, and we call that informality, sandwich informality. We are also, you can see here in the picture in the screen, it's about the changing the pattern, urban pattern in the peri-urban area. Before, they are rural area. Today, it's changing into urbanized area, but unplanned, going very, a lot of, without prepared plan. So this is a great thing, what we call urban sprawl, urban unplanned, or what we call informal settlement, or slum, or squatter. In the picture, show you still a lot of slum, the cases house along the riverside. Okay, and you can see the hygienic situation in the canal that we have it. But still, because of urbanization process, urban growth is about 36%. So this means people need house, and we have developed the housing profile. And it calculated that the people are coming accordingly to the demand in urban area. Now, counting from now, 2045, 49, we need every year 370,000 units. And you see before, we produce only more than 270,000 units. So we need no more house. And more house, that means government sector, private sector should have the capacity to produce that. And the community also should be engaged in better way. So the demand is very high, but the supply is still limited. Second thing is about affordability. Affordability is a very important issue because the production there, the supply there, but we cannot afford to pay for that because it's very expensive. So depending in the income level of the Vietnamese, we're making the calculation. We see that one, no? For example, what is the accessibility to one apartment with 60 square meter? So by 60 square meter, it's cost around more than 50,000 US dollar. And of course, there are only 15%, 10 to 15% of the population, urban population, can reach such level of affordability. So where, if they cannot pay for that, where did they go? They go for informal production. Informal production, that means without rule, regulation, without contract permit, and even in some land without access, appropriate access to sanitation, to infrastructure, to road. One informal house, as I mentioned, the type 3, you can see here, it costs only 5,000. And there are most people can reach that level for pay. But another way of thinking about how to earn the house, because in Asian country, we have the habit to buy the house, to earn the house rather than to rent the house. So we are thinking that if government develop appropriate rental housing system, so people can get better access to rental housing system. But now we are talking about ownership of the house. But the private sector, they produce also rental housing. But the problem with the private sector, that access to clean water, access the drainage, the sewage system is not appropriate, and that causing the environmental pollution and decay. Because of free market, and you see now, even the income level of people is increasing. We are calculating 10 years, 2000, 2010, and we see income of the people increased 3 times, but the housing price, land price increased 10 times. So affordability is a problem if the land is very expensive. So that's the problem with the market. So I mentioned it, housing demand is high, housing need is very high, but how can government dealing with the social housing for the poor? People who cannot pay the house in the commercial house in the market. So Hamming have social housing policy. But because government housing policy is subsidized, so subsidized, that means government can provide very limited, number of the house. And that's why, majority of the people cannot get access to such program. People, worker in the industrial zone, student at the college, university, and low-income people in urban area. 80-90% of the people, they can go for such, housing program. But they cannot buy it because there are no system in the social housing. Government have produced very limited housing program. There are no problem also. This one is, the win up apartment, condominium, but win up during the socialist time. It's now decay, like slum. They are all degraded and win from the 1970, 1980. They need to improve it, but there are now no funding, and people are still living there. It's very dangerous. They are very vulnerable to any earthquake or any problem, even typhoon. So a number of such kind of apartment decay, but there are no funding, no policy to make such change in changing how to improve this, what we call the decay housing or slum housing. The number of slum, we make the calculation. The slum level, as I mentioned it to you, 35%. You can see here in Vietnam. It's a similar, it's lower than Philippines. It's similar level to Southeast Asian country. But the point is, if you improve some component, they are changing. For example, how improve the access to sanitation, because the main problem rely in two things. One is about, the legal title. Another one is about the access to sanitation. If we can improve it, you can improve, reduce the slum number in the housing sector. So all these problems, as I mentioned to you, is about institutional problem, because the policy framework in the past is too much relying state subsidy. Now they are changing to free market, but they are still focusing in quantitative houses target rather than how to create choice for people. Making choice, that means how to make people affordable to housing, how to make housing adequate to the selection of the people. So that means you need to create lower standard, changing the standard, maybe lower number of square meter, but they are affordable because they are lower the cost. There are issues also related to the institutional change of the land. So land market even changing to the free market, but we still do not have the freehold system. We have the leasehold system. So the leasehold system, the allocation of land done by government. And government have preference. They allocate land for big company, allocate land for state company. So that is creating the land speculation, and there are insufficient number of land supply. And if when you do not have the land supply, do not have an adequate place, the land price increase and increase the housing price at the same time. That is constrain the affordability of the people. Another issue is important also. When we build the house, we need the technology, we need the building material, and of course, we need as public space. We need good environmental, and we need technology innovation. All the issue also at developing country, Vietnam need to change, to adapt, and to make it different. The housing financing also is a challenge because it's missing to address the need of the majority. That means if you have the house, you can mortgage in the market, you go to buy the house, but there are no system, microfinancing system for the poorer. Because the poorer, they don't have, the house to make in the mortgage, so they need to have a different way of, they have microfinancing to improve their own house. And of course, government have to think about how to balance it with the free market and social housing. That is issue, I think, institutional issue. So as you don't have the appropriate formal market, you have informal market. Informal market, that means people buy without certificate. It's lower price, it's insecure, but they can afford to pay for that house. And I mentioned about housing in countryside, informal housing. And the rental housing should be improved because people can get better access to rental housing. They don't need to buy the house, but they can rent the house. And of course, that it lower the cost. They can afford to pay for that. And the standard, building cost standard, need to be changing also to meet the requirement of the society. Because if you have a big standard, big construction cost, it is increasing the construction cost, so people cannot pay for that. Construction permit, licenses, all that administrative mean money and time consuming. So that is constraining the market, housing market. And of course, there are also administrative problem in terms of coordination, because people go for construction, business, company, they go for construction, they have to apply, different permission from the government. If the government do not decide to allow that land is contract to get to be accessible, people pay high cost, and of course the housing price it increases, and of course they need appropriate planning system, because planning system allow people to go appropriately to develop a planning area. It control, and of course the development control is how to control the development. Do not make it like slum. So for policy recommendation, what should I say? First, you look when we talk about affordability, that mean price. So the price determined by the supply and demand side. A lot of demand but little supply, the price increases. A lot of supply and demand is little, the price decreases. So this factor from the demand side is influenced by demographic condition, rate of urbanization, the household formation, property right, legal basis, housing financing, fiscal policy, subsidy, or macroeconomic condition. For example, changing population. There are more people demanding. Young people demand different typology of the housing, and access housing system, economic development very fast. So people have money and want to go and to buy the house. From supply side, we have the land availability. We have the construction industry. We have also the infrastructure development. We have also the financing. We have different factor. Now go into more detail. This one, what we call the housing dimension. If the policy keep this dimension quite normal like this one, that means the market run effectively. Because we need to have appropriate building material and construction industry. We need also have the appropriate labor. That means contractor, high technical labor, and of course light worker, housing worker. If the infrastructure appropriately develop it, so people don't have to get a house like slum. And we have also the land availability, as I mentioned it to you, important. And the last one is finance. So this diamond, if the country have all this one available, so that means we have appropriate housing provision. Regarding to slum, habitat is always working in slum, with slum. So the slum, if I have two sides, one side, that means we have to improve the slum because they are already slum and we have no choice to how to improve the slum. We also have to prevent the slum, the formation of the slum. So in the country level, they have a slum upgrading program, what we call improvement strategy. That is curative. So in order to improve the slum, we need to provide infrastructure. We have to improve the planning. We have also to how to regulate the land, how to improve the house of the people who living in slum, providing infrastructure, allow people, if they do not have for example, legal status, legal title of the land, to allow them to have the legal status, they can mortgage and they can borrow the money and they can improve their own house, and we can hand them to readjust the plan. So improve the road, improve also access to water and sanitation, and in infrastructure provision. That is curative measure. But in order to bring the slum for the future, because slum continue, if we do not have the housing availability, market availability. So in order to do that, we have to improve the market of the house. That is improve the building industry, changing regularly the form of the land in order to reduce the land price, create the appropriate housing financing system and provision of infrastructure and services. In order to do the habitat promote what we call enabling strategy. That means government play the role of enabler. Government cannot just only actor to provide the housing. And you don't need to provide the housing. You need to enable people, facilitating people, to get access to land financing, infrastructure, and services. And government can change the law regulation, reducing restrict regulation and procedure in the housing sector. So people, business sector can get better access to their services of the land financing, infrastructure, etc. And of course, that should promote innovative idea and promote also effective and realistic regulation. Because government anyway need to have the certain development control in order to ensure there are no planet development. There are no big slum and squatter or also sprawl in the area. And should strengthen institutional framework that allow people to participate to decide in the housing process. So in conclusion, enabling strategy is government withdraw from the direct provision of housing in order to facilitate other via like appropriate regulatory and financial environment and habitat before it agenda 21. Now we have the new urban agenda in order to promote better, affordable, adequate housing provision. That means the name of habitat, the role of UN habitat, that how to promote the sustainable urban development and adequate access to the housing. So there need to change. And how to make a successful implementation of enabling approach. First, that it need to be ownership and political willingness. That government do need to commit for that. And they need to recognize such policy. I think Vietnam now is taking care about enabling strategy in the country. And state need to make the institutional reform, decentralize more power to city, allow people to participate, that means participation, and of course, creating win-win situation, that means partnership, coalition for housing production. Coalition between government NGO, coalition between government private sector, coalition also between the housing association, that means people demand for housing, and the private sector and academic sector who can support the housing provision. Housing financing is another issue, very important.
Oh.
So that means need to change measure, regulatory measure, institutional measure, administrative measure, how to improve the microfinancing, how to improve the housing mechanism and financing in order to ensure that people can borrow, can mortgage, can go to the bank, and also they can access to better financing. Because some people don't have mortgage, they can allow some cooperative mortgage that they can buy the house by themselves. So there are also the need of changing urban landing and building standard, the land use, how to subdivide the land use, and the recognition of the informal sector. So in Vietnam, in the country, the problem is the informal sector is there, but government don't want to recognize the informal and genuine sector, the policy. They look always in the positive side of the coin. That means it's about large-scale development, commercial housing, modern housing. But in reality, beside the modern housing, beside there are also slum people living. So people that need to progressive to enabling for informal sector. So allow the community engage to improve their own house. And that need to be changed in the policy, in the law. So community engagement in the provision infrastructure social housing very important because they are the beneficiary of the housing provision. They are efficient to meet different demand of different groups because they know their own demand and group. And they also can provide services and housing in affordable cost. That means lower the cost than commercial cost. The housing provision will also generate employment and local income for the people in community. And of course, by working together, by creating the appropriate environment for working and providing housing, they understand the problem of the provision of the water, problem access to financing, problem of the sanitation, the problem of the transport. So it's creating, strengthening community cohesion inside the community. So social capital is very important. So that means community can contribute the capital, they can contribute the resources, and resources that means can be mobilized from the community themselves. I mentioned already about housing financing because people always have a big bank and need to be mortgaged. Now, if you have a short-term credit, you have small loan, you have the incremental housing model. That means people they can improve their house incrementally, and they have community mortgage program. That means people can trust each other and they can have money borrowing from the community development fund. So and rotated saving group, etc., and cooperative credit, etc. So that means microcredit, another alternative financing arrangement for community access. That is what we call the socialization policy. So this means a policy promote the engagement of the different sector, different actor to discuss, to creating a mechanism to exchange and to dialogue, to suggest and to recommend and to agree in some housing model appropriate, affordable for people. We organize training in the country, where we invite representative of the bank, we invite representative of the district authority, of the central government, invite the private sector, we invite also NGO, we invite also, the community representative. So they come together and they discuss and they have different view on what they are doing and what that they need and how they can collaborate and how can they achieve the win-win situation. That means a creative model of mechanism to dialogue and to agree. So that means it promotes more commitment. It's creating more housing alternative. It's facilitating financial mechanism. It's boosting the social mobilization. And of course, through the training, management support, we can create better, alternative of housing. Today, since 2015, we are working in the new agenda of sustainable development, SDG. And their new urban agenda also is promoted. And the new urban agenda addressing of the sustainable human settlement and access to adequate housing. So in this, the component of this agenda is new. It promoting city, promoting different actors to engage in the dialogue and cooperation for better urban future. So in this component, they are focusing in 3 dimensions. The first dimension is about management. We need to strong, effective leadership. The second dimension is about planning. You have a better land use planning, particularly territorial and patient strategy. Because we have plan, but we have to strategy how to connect at the city, regional, and national level. Third important, that is law regulation. And in these 3 corners, we have to address the citizen participation, community participation, and the financing mechanism in order to ensure that money there, participation there, leadership there, and law, regulation, and good planning in order to facilitate better urban future. So housing should be component of the strategy. And this one is promoted not only at the city level, it's national level, regional level, and global level. So that is what we are working in line with the new urban agenda. And this new urban agenda is well connected to SDG agenda. In conclusion, so there are, as I mentioned at the beginning, the market reform allowing better housing modern provision that market facilitate the change. But there also remain the weaknesses and challenges in the housing provision and distribution in the country. So in order to address this problem, there are two things. One thing that is to need to ensure the market work properly. Because if the market work properly, that means it's reducing the cost and making housing much more affordable to the people. But the second problem is even the price of the house the house is affordable, but still a number of the people very poor. They cannot reach the housing. Affordability. So how can we do that? So before government subsidize, but subsidize do not work because government have very limited fund. The best way to do is to enable people in the housing process. That means ensure that people can provide and distribute them house by themselves. So that is what we are promoting, the right to adequate housing. When we are working with the Vietnamese government in housing strategy, the first point they focus like first priority, that is housing target, that the number of how to produce it, how many square meter that people that you can see, it's 24 square meter they achieve it. But that is the supply side. The important is affordability, demand side. If house there, but how people can pay for that, and how to get people can pay and can get the adequate housing for them. That is the key issue. So that means you need to change the meaning of housing and to understand what it means, the right to adequate housing, because that it defines the framework of housing policy. And the housing needs to change the constitution, law, and housing strategy need to be much more holistic and creative. Not just only focused in the issue of ownership of the house. So that means they need to recognize also the important efficiency of enabling strategy, how to enable community people in the housing process to change legally institutional financial framework in order to enable people to produce, distribute the house. So now I would like to take the last page of the presentation, focusing at what is the right of adequate housing. So according to the International Convention Economic, Social, and Cultural right to adequate housing comprise of 7 elements. First, of security of tenure. That means protection from eviction. Many people they are evicted from the land. Availability of services, money, and facility infrastructure. That means there need to be infrastructure there. The house need to have the skill. They have to be access to infrastructure facility. The location is important because if people work in the city, but they have to travel very far. They cannot work back. They consuming the time. Location is far. It's not in issue the money. So location should be very important. Habitability, that means durability, is the house. We need to protect the people. Affordability, that I mentioned to you, that is affordable price. Accessibility also very important because how people to get access to the house is the house should be accessible. It's not located in the vulnerable area where the flooding, etc. So accessibility is how very important. And last point about cultural adequacy, because People have different culture and they need different typology of how people living in minority may have different demand than people living in the, in the plain. Okay, so far, no, I think I'm reaching the time to finish the presentation. And now I'm available for some questions that you may share. And of course, thank you very much for your attention. And I hope my presentation is of interest for you. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Dr. Nguyen Quang. Thank you very much for interesting lecture. And the first question are already there. If you have a look on the chat on the top, I think we have
Yes.
7, 8 questions already.
Yeah, let me open.
The first is from Catalin Berescu.
Okay.
It would be very fine if you can read first the question loud, then answer the question.
Okay, fine.
Thank you.
The first question comes from Kathleen Perescu. What was the main forces that produced the improvement in housing in the last year in Vietnam? Who benefited from the increase in every surface of the house? Superficies of the house. How is the growth distributed? I think the main forces that produce improvement in housing, I mentioned to you, that is the market, because government going more in terms of the facilitation. Government still continue producing the house, but the free market, commercial house is increasing because of the market. People have their benefiting, from the selling of the house, the income that they get it, the selling in the market. So most produced by the market. So I think the main source of the free market, that means private business sector, business, construction company in commercial housing. So in terms of who benefited of the increase of the average housing, I think median income, or high level, high median income people benefited more because they affordable. That's how affordable for better standard. So that means the price, as I mentioned to you, about 40,000, 50,000 US dollar on one house is affordable for the high median income people. So that means they are mobility. But the poor people, they still have to go for slum, have to go informal area. And of course, but in terms of benefiting, I think all the people are benefiting because they are benefiting not so only the house, it's benefiting the improvement of urban area. They're benefiting also because of what we call what we say, that means the changing the house, because they can move into different level of the housing. So most people in the society movement, but I see the median and high level income, they are benefiting. Okay. Second question comes from Honey. Is there oversupply of housing for higher income? Yes. Yes. Yeah, housing bubble also. Yeah, speculation. For certain time, now I think housing market in Vietnam facing problem because the producer, they see a lot of high interest and high benefit in the higher level of the market. And so higher income in the market, they too much focus, but people cannot pay for that. So they are bubble, and the bubble that means now during since December of the last year and now, they're facing problem because they cannot sell the house in that one. So speculation is a big problem. because of speculation, no, people no go for the higher income level. But today, no, they're facing problem because they cannot send the house because of only no. I mean Vietnam is increasing, no income level increasing, but income average of a citizen is about 500 US dollar per month. So in the big city, no, just only the I mean the higher income people they can buy the expensive house. Question from EOSU, no, is there an approach of the World Bank a neoliberal approach that it criticized strongly in the last decade, for example, in the work research and management and the financing of housing? How you respond to the critic? I think the World Bank no flagging the laissez-faire. I mean the price right. But as I mentioned to you, no, habitat addressing in different issue is not just only the market. And I mentioned you, market even work perfectly. Certain people they cannot afford to pay in the market, so they need government intervention. That means government intervention in terms of support, and the support they should go, no, how to enable the citizen, the poor, the people, the community to improve their own house. So that is a habitat approach. We do not believe that market can solve all the problem. I think government intervention still is very important, and social housing is important for, I mean, very poor and vulnerable people. Naresh, is that any role from private sector in housing production for low-income people? I think no. Okay, we are discussing with the private sector also in housing provision for low-income people. Yes, but the point, no, they need to get, no, I mean the benefit because they not work for free. They need to have profit because private sector is how to maximize their profit. But even we want work with private sector to maximize profit, if we have, I mean, no, win-win, that is cooperation. That I mean, no, a good platform to discuss about cooperation and coalition. For example, private sector they can go, no, and work together if they have a better access to, I mean, financing. It lower interest than the market interest, than the normal market because of the management. So if we have such cooperation, we can have the private sector can participate in housing production. Currently, you know, some private company, business company, they also, you know, participate in the production of the social housing. But they complain a lot because of government procedure, because of lack of benefit. Government trying, you know, to hand them to get a better access to land availability, and they have certain portion of the land, you know, for the commerce and housing. But in reality, that is a big challenge. I think, no, a good platform and cooperation is to improve, no, the participation of private sector. Question from Kathleen Berescu. How many people work at governmental level in area of housing? How large is administrative apparatus related to housing? Okay, I cannot give you all the answer about this because I am not government. But anyway, I can share with you, know, the structure of government. Government, the housing bureau in Vietnam, it belongs to the Ministry of Construction. That housing bureau, no, comprise about, I mean, at the Ministry of Construction, about 60, 70 staff members. At the provincial level, no, they have the department construction. So inside the department construction, they have a housing sector, housing section inside. Mono section, they have about 10 to 15 people working inside. And Vietnam have about 64, no, provinces and city. I mean, city at the provincial level. And lower level, that is district level, they have also, no, some group of working in the housing. But in reality, people, okay, I discussed with the Vietnamese official, and they said the number working here very limited. We cannot deal with too many problems. We need to change now from housing bureau, that means as department level, to be general department. That means increasing, and even we discussed about how to change the name of the Ministry of Construction to be Ministry of Construction and Housing Development. So this means the number of the people working in apparatus is still very small to compare with the demands. Question from Henny. How about the land availability problem for low-income housing? Very interesting question. Okay. City and provinces in Vietnam, they have their own strategy to promote economic development. And they must more in order to promote economic problem. The government want to raise the provincial budgets. That means the revenue. So in order to raise the revenue, they have only the land. And they have maybe some other issue to promote the private sector development, economic, etc. But they see the land is a very important factor. So land, they put priority for economic development, for commerce and housing. Low-income housing, they push them in the periphery area. And people live in periphery area, they cannot travel because that is issue about accessibility, because they are constrained. They take about a traffic jam 1 hour to go to the job, and that is creating constraint for them. So that means housing for low income is always a big problem. Land for low income is always a big problem. Low income housing, big problem. Because preferences of the city is allocated land for commercial housing, for budgets, for fund mobilization, for investor, commercial investor. So I think in order to see solution to this issue, they need to link the city development, the provincial development strategy with the housing development. And housing should be an important component of city and provincial development. It's a difficult question. Please explain the success rate of the government and private sector in providing housing in Vietnam, especially for residents in slum area. I think urbanization and housing development changing the urban pattern in Vietnam. Before, we are on everyone is poor. Now currently, the society divide. There are more rich people, and of course, they are in the patient dimension. There are a number of rich people living in new residential area, like in the West. When planet area, they have the public space, they have the lake, they have the good environment, they have also condominium, etc., linking with the villa. So that means private sector and government facilitate private sector, But there are certain people still living in slum area, and that is the concern of UN Habitat, because government have certain program that we call urban upgrading program. But urban upgrading program, is a government money borrowed from the donor, like the World Bank or ADB, etc. Private sector, they do not work too much in the slum area. Some they working in some slum area, but in strategic location. So they changing the area, like the old quarter of Hanoi, for example, making a business area. So that private sector improve the environment in the own quarter. But because they are profit seeking. So, there are certain engagement and Vietnamese government, but the approach of Vietnamese government to give solution is still in subsidy side. That means borrow money from the donor, but you need to promote the city, the community, the people engagement in the slum improvement. That is the question, the answer. How about the partnership between government and private sector to balance the supply housing with the housing demand from different group level of income? I think government coordinate very well with private sector, but focusing in focus commerce and housing. That cooperation very good. But in terms of low income housing, that means the sector, lower income housing, that cooperation is not very good. That is what I can answer. Is there any public-private partnership to reduce slum area in Vietnam, especially inside Mekong Delta? Maybe corporate social responsibility cover slum area. Okay, we continue. We have a discussion with the Minister of Construction, and we also talk about how to improve the slum area in Mekong Delta, not just on Mekong Delta, even in the Northern Delta also. The idea is how to bring, the middle between the market and government, what we call cooperative housing. So the cooperative housing, allow the engagement, as I mentioned to you, that the business model that we are discussing with some, cooperative housing from Australia. They are trying to facilitate a mechanism of negotiation and dialogue between different actors. And I mentioned the banker, the private sector, the cooperative, the local government, the civil, either the community, to discuss about different solutions, different models, to lower the cost of the house, to improve the access and services in the house, and of course, to improve also the housing management, because housing management it means cost also. So you mentioned here about corporate social responsibility, no? I think we are working on that, but the point is, in order to promote that, you need to have the good business model to ensure that cooperation between different actors. Inma, Sushanti, how could people and also government in city respond to dynamic changing, fulfill adequate housing? Okay, finally, we discussed with many local government, many city government authority, and do presentation and also discussing about housing provision. But their preference, their priority is too much focused in the commercial housing, because by allowing the private sector to work with them, they can get better budgets. Okay, revenue, they can get better revenue for their city development. There's still a lot of work to work with them in terms of city development strategy, including the housing strategy. So normally, city very dynamic in commercial housing, but it's not dynamic in social housing. All of them blame about how can they get land for social housing, but in reality, they prefer and give land to the private sector for for commercial housing. Wisle Hajia, I'm interested with housing financing community based. How far the alternative contribute housing financing in Vietnam? Okay, we have some community housing financing model working with Asia Coalition for Housing in Thailand. We work also with Vietnam Association of the City. They working in certain modern community development fund, which is a certain thing is related to, the small grant and small financing for community buy, and of course it engage people in provision, in the provision of the house, in how to get the collective saving, to improve the house. The model it work very well, but we cannot upscale it because lacking government ownership and policy to promote the small financing system. Harry Dieter, is there any role from the private or public sector to conserve the deteriorated building rather than demolishing? Okay, thank you. Very interesting question. I think there are many idea innovation. For example, in the own quarter, instead of destroy the building, they convert the building into, the museum, restaurant, etc., and try to add heritage value, because that will bring economic incentive. There are many efforts from private and public sector also, because government is interested to promote the heritage conservation. We are working in the old quarter of Hoàn Kiếm, Hanoi, for example. There are some group of students also working in how to change the function of the old building into a new building, but still instead of destroying this. But the issue is not upscale, and I think that it currently we are working together UNESCO, UNIDO, promoting city of innovation. So I think the idea is to engage private sector, to improve deteriorated building is very important. And of course, we can make change, because own building can change. And for the startup group, for example, creating good, what we call smart city, where we use the building and engage different young group and innovative group to discuss for innovative ideas. So far I respond to all the question. Anyone want to say something? And thank you very much for your attention and very interesting question that you make to me. Thank you.
Thank you very much.